So welcome to everybody, and so we are happy you want to spend your evening with us. I'm Lorenzo Dos, the Program Quality Director of District 109, and tonight we want to explore a bit better the possibility of using technology to run online meeting for Toastmasters, and especially Zoom. For that, we have invited a special guest or a speaker, that is Luca Rotagnolo. He was last year division director in division D in Switzerland, and tonight he will help us to understand how to use all the features of Zoom and to have effective meeting online. Up to you, Luca.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Pleasure being here, not only as immediate past Division D director, but also as a member of an online club who only exists online, because there's people from all over the world who join the club I'm a member of, which is a themed club. So we do have one common interest among us. And the only way to make that club happen is, in fact, well, the online world, and thus we use Zoom. So my experience as a user of Zoom dates for Toastmasters meeting dates at least 2 years, ever since we've started this club with Charter a little less than 2 years ago. That's why I'm bringing a little more experience from a user perspective also, which is something that, you know, people know how to use teleconferencing tool normally. If you use them for work, that's fine. But how to apply them in a real world scenario with Toastmasters, that is probably the question that people have, because you know what? That only comes with experience. There is no way really to have a cookbook that tells you exactly how to do it, because I don't believe there is one single way to do it. There's multiple ways. Now, of course, some things will be relevant for the administrators, the hosts, or as Lorenzo, I think, coined the term maybe, Zoom masters. And these are the people who would actually maintain the underlying infrastructure we need. That is setting up the call, configuring the basic settings that are needed, and then during the call itself, making sure that the system runs as expected. So that's one very important part. Now, let me, I don't have polling rights, unfortunately, here, but I can ask something real quick for those who want to reply. Who here has already an account with Zoom and has used it for meetings? I see a few hands, at least 3, 4, 5, and me. Okay, out of those who are not in camera. So let's say probably, I say a fourth to a third of people will be Zoom masters for their club. So some of the things that I will mention tonight are going into that direction, and some others, it will be up to you as Zoom masters that are people who know a little more about Zoom, how to translate that into practice for your own club members. Because in the end, you will be seen as the Zoom expert for your club. And that is exactly what we need. We need people who know, I'm saying Zoom because that's what we're using. It could be any other platform for that matter. But Zoom is something that we know, we're aware of. It's relatively cheap for the club finances. And I think that's what we're most likely going to standardize in general terms. So let me start with a few points. And the idea for tonight is to touch on a few items and then open up to broad question and answers that were taking a lot of time when we did this similar session last Sunday. One thing, there is no need to have an account on Zoom to participate in meetings. And this is very important. Only those who will set up meetings and will probably have paid a Zoom Pro account in order to unlock all the features, that is having up to 100 participants for a meeting without any time constraints, that will be, of course, somebody who has an account, a username, that is the email address normally, and a password. Now, my advice in this case would be to use a shared email account, which would be the club email account for that specific account. By doing that, it would be easier to share the password to access that specific Zoom account, and maybe more than one club officer could create meetings. Maybe there is only one Zoom master, fair enough, but maybe there will be interest for, you know, allowing other members to maybe do a virtual meeting for only club club mentors, mentors or speakers, or maybe do your executive officers meeting on Zoom, and it could be somebody else to manage that. So that is a feature that you might want to use. Create the account on an email address that relates to the club. But still, and I maintain this is very important, the normal users that are the members of the club do not need to have a Zoom account to join. They only need the URL, that is the link, in order to join the specific meeting. That is very important to remind everyone. So no need to create unnecessary accounts. Okay. Another thing that I think would be relevant is, even if you don't have an account, you might become a host or a co-host of a specific meeting. And what does that mean? You do have a little more privilege on the platform when a meeting is run when you're a co-host or the host of the meeting itself. That would entail, for instance, muting everyone or unmuting everyone to their liking, or individual people who might have some background noise and they've forgotten to mute themselves. This is something that you can do easily from the participant window or from each individual window that a user has. If you scroll with the mouse, that of course depends whether you have an iPad, an iPhone, or the normal Mac or Windows client. I'm using Mac in my case. You could actually move and mute or unmute people individually. Not only that, you might do something that I think is relevant for our normal meetings. You might rename people. Why would we rename people? Not that we don't care about their name, that's fine, but we want to maybe highlight those who have a role in our meeting, especially the person who has these things with them. That is the timer. And that is very clear, because the timer would be the person who, the moment he or she shows the color card, you might want to keep that video right before your eyes when you are a speaker. And for that matter, there is a feature which is called pin screen, which allows you to basically have every time, at each and every second, the screen of that person visible as a bigger window, instead of having anybody else who spoke the last. Because Zoom automatically switches video depending on who's speaking. But if you are the speaker, well, nobody is, you don't want to look at yourself. You don't care. You might want to look at yourself in the small window. It's more important for you to look at the timer. So you might want to then try to pin the screen of anybody. It doesn't matter. Pin the screen is something that is done locally on your computer. It's nobody else's business. It's your business to pin somebody on your screen. So go ahead and try that by going into top right, where it is pin video, and you can select anybody in the call, and you will see that person alone until you want to unpin the video. You will have a button on the top left to unpin that person video and move back to the person who spoke last. So this is a very important feature that I think it's worth reminding, especially in light of using color cards. Now, on using color cards, I'm using the standard ones that Toastmasters provided me when I chartered my club here in Lausanne. They work really well because the colors are very clear. Now beware, because in some cases, green and yellow sometimes have a tint problem, and they might look very similar. It depends also on the lights you have. And you see red, of course, comes up very nicely. So make sure that you do, anybody who needs to be a timer, you might buy them from Toastmasters and have them shipped, or you can go to the nearest shop that has color paper for kids, maybe, provided that they're open, given what's happening around the world these days, and get them and try to see that the color work properly in a test run you might do, even with yourself. Why not? Any questions on what I said so far? Is this clear? Is this something
Can I ask this question?
Please go ahead.
I joined one of our clubs the other day, and instead of having a person playing the role of a timer and using the cards, the colored cards, they had this online timer, automatic timer, showing exactly the seconds and the minutes and changing the color as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it automatically changed the color. They had placed it among the members of the club, and speakers could just pin the timer so that they could see it at all times.
Okay, that's a very good suggestion. It's a nice best practice. There's two issues with that I could see. First, you don't want to show seconds because that is not what Toastmasters provides with. I know that, you know, whenever you go to TED or any other conference, you will have a precise time with minutes and seconds. That's fine. But in our case, we're used to color. So even though you might have an app and you want to take the screen of your phone and show that, please do not show seconds because that's what we want to do. You can show colors, of course. There's no problem with that. So if it's an automated system that only shows the colors as the time rolls, fine. It could be used in a very similar way, and so you would pin that virtual user that shows the screen. Now, on the other hand, if it is somebody sharing the screen, then it becomes a little more problematic, especially if the speaker wants to show his screen for his slides. So that is why going to a normal camera with a person, with a physical person, the timer, because you will always need a timer to show the cards, might be old-fashioned, but would definitely, in a way, would be easier to make work. That's my suggestion. But thanks for the question, Anastasia. Any other comment on these topics so far? All right, so let's move on. One of the things that is, of course, a little more complicated is that everyone should be joining these meetings. Now, we should all be very thoughtful of the effort that online tools such as meetup.com for non-members who want to maybe come as visitors to our meetings, but most definitely EasySpeak have in order to allow people to join. And yes, we have sometimes WhatsApp groups and all of that to share the information, but you know, EasySpeak is the club management tool that most of us here in Europe and elsewhere in the world use. And so I was very pleased to see Francesco's work in putting together the video that is published, I think, yesterday or overnight, which tells a great deal about how to, in fact, run meetings and having EasySpeak tell any member or any user for that matter who goes on EasySpeak to look for the club meeting where to connect to automatically, because it's just a link. You click on it and it will pop up in your browser that will automatically start the Zoom application on the correct meeting. So thanks, Francesco, for that. What I want to do is to, in fact, share the link to the YouTube video that you've published, because that would allow people to go through not only to see how it works, but most important for those EasySpeak managers within the clubs that need to configure this at least once or maybe more than once, depending whether you do have a fixed URL that is a fixed meeting for the club or you change that depending on the needs you have. So that was very good, and thanks, Francesco, for supporting that. I mentioned something about well, let me get there. No, let me get there now. Presenting slides. Yeah, it's always a mess in clubs. You have to have the projector, and you know, where do you connect the computer? Is it the right plug and all? Yeah, we're in the virtual world now. We are already using a computer and sometimes just an iPad, but we can still do it. We can present straight from the computer onto our own computer. But there are some best practices there that I think are worth sharing. Now, depending on, thanks for sharing the link to the video, Lorenzo, in the chat. Depending on the setting you might have, everyone should actually be allowed to share a screen or just simply an application. And so what I'm doing right now is I'm going to share my, where is it? Let me find it. Application that it is. It's Keynote. For those who don't know Mac, the version that we have on Mac is called Keynote. And so here are the slides that I have. I'm starting playback right now. Computer is slightly slow. And here I am. I had a few slides. And I also have right now on my side a screen with a number of heads, mine at the top, and a few other of the participants here in this view. You all have gotten the big screen with all the slides and my little window right there, which is kind of good if you only focus on slides really, but it might be done better if we focus on something different. And let me, actually, I'm having an issue there with my mouse pointer, which is now not being shown, and that doesn't help me. So I need to.
Luca, we cannot see your screen yet.
Is that right? Okay, that is.
In my case, I was able to see it.
So sometimes there might be an issue with the speed, but I wanted to show you something else, not necessarily that. So let me get back. You should see the slides, but now I'm going to share again the keynote. There you go. Sometimes you see it takes a little second for things to just. Okay, do you see Francesco's face and the screenshot that I took from his video today?
Yep, I can see it.
All right, perfect. Now, what I'm doing right now, I am sharing the screen, but as you can see, I am only just basically having a small window and the big slides right there, which is not really what we want to do. We can do better than that because, you know, guys, we are Toastmasters, and yes, sometimes slides are important, but they're never really, let me get back to this, they're never really the important thing that we want to do. What we want to do is to, in fact, do the opposite. And if you click on the top right of the little window where you see my face, you will have the little icon on the top right, and if you hover on it, it says swap shared screen with video. And once you do that, the reverse will happen, which means that the slide becomes small. In this case, in my slide, I was actually sharing with myself a PDF file of the contest rulebooks. And you will see that all of a sudden, the speaker becomes big. And so I can actually be, you know, using my hand gesture and body movement and all of that. And all of a sudden, it's actually better because the slides will be over there in the screen. And once I don't have any slides to present any longer, like now, I'm just going to put a filler slide. I'm just going to put a blank slide. You know, if my background is white, I'm going to use a white background. If my background is black, I'm going to use a black background. So for those who have shared screens, you still can see me because I'm speaking. I'm using my hands as an Italian would do. And the slides are there. They're not bothering because I do not have any slide to present right now. So that is a bit of the trick to use. Remember about that little button up there on the top right of the window. And yes, I do see somebody who uses annotation. That's another feature that could be useful in order to draw on the slides. There's nothing on my screen right now, but I've seen somebody that drew something in green. Of course, people should be careful about what they would write on and would write about on the screens. So that's another interesting feature because, again, as Toastmasters, yes, the slides might be important, but we're not really focusing on the slide. These are no business presentations. It's more about using slides as a prop for our presentation. And thus, it's best to have the smaller slides. And by the way, make them with big characters. And then, of course, having a bigger window on the speaker itself. I wanted to also show this in progress, but we couldn't due to the fact that the setting that Lorenzo has on this meeting does not allow for polls to happen.
I think I was able to do it. So
Were
maybe
you?
yeah, I can test it. Check.
Let's see. Did it do it right away? Because if it did, then
I can try if you want. Launch polling.
okay. So what happens right now is you will be taken. There you go. Right. Okay. So this is what polling is all about. Okay. I do have a window on my screen right now, and yeah, I'm hungry. I'm definitely hungry. Okay. So where do you see this happening? Best of the evening. Best speaker, best table topic speaker, best evaluator. This is the simplest way to avoid, skipping on the best of the evening. Now, the results could actually be shared also with the others by the host, because when the host ends the poll can actually be shared with the users. If you want to test it, you could. But at the same time, you might want to keep it to yourself and only announce it at the end as usual with the trophy master. Or if the Toastmaster of the evening is going to announce that, then it would be up to him to announce it. So entirely up to you.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's
please.
for the judges. That's for the judges, right? How would you send this poll only to the judges?
Okay, very good point, Julia. I wasn't really inferring about judging here. This is a little outside of the contest context.
Okay.
In this case, I'm more reflecting on normal meetings. Now, contests are very different, because with contests, first you need, the form is a little more complex than 1, 2, 3 choice. You could actually do polls which include more than one question and multiple answers as well, but then it gets very complicated. And I think, as you said, not all you cannot restrict polls to only a subgroup of the people, and that becomes an issue. So for what concerns contest, I wouldn't go this path. But for what concerns normal meetings, for those clubs who have best speaker, best table topic speaker, best evaluator, that would be a way out. Okay. I don't know if you've actually done the sharing of the results. I'm still sharing my screen, Lorenzo, so I have a bit of an off.
Yes, I did it.
Have you? Okay.
Briefly.
Because you should have a window on the top.
So the poll's results goes to the host master, to the Zoom master.
Correct. Right. To the host. I could actually share them as well, because I am a co-host in this case. Co-hosts have polling rights as well.
I've reshared now the results, just in case for somebody. So Luca has been great. He's one of the top. Together, I'm hungry.
Together with hungry. I didn't have the time to vote yet, but yeah, I was just concentrating on my question. But Luca is great. Yes, thank you.
So going back to the slides that I have, if my computer goes back to doing its thing, let me actually shut the window here. Yeah, you see that I do have, this is the view that the host of the Zoom meeting would have in actually seeing what is going on. Right now, nobody has voted, so it's all 0%. But then as votes come in, you would see that happen. And you have a timer up there, so you'll say, give you a minute, and then once the 60 seconds mark go, then you could actually end the poll. And what you will see in the end is the result. And then you can share the results if you want, or you just jot them down, you keep them, and you keep going. And only at the end, you will announce. Because remember, if you do share results, everyone will know right away, which is not what we do at Toastmasters meeting, because we keep the best of at the very end of our meeting. So I think that not sharing the result would be a best practice in our case.
Can I just ask you, do you have to prepare the poll questions? You have to, if you have several ones, can you prepare 3 or 4 at the same time beforehand?
You've just preempted my next slide, which is exactly about that. So this is a screenshot of effectively the view that you would have on the web interface in order to configure them. Now, this was just a test, and of course, I didn't have a name of a speaker, and for table topics, of course, you want to change them as they happen. You don't know up front who the table topic speakers are, but you could pre-prepare them, And then you might want to edit them at the last second with the names, at least to the table topic speaker. And then you could implement them through the client. There is a button which is on the bottom bar, which is polls. And then you can select which one of the poll to activate, and you activate it and it comes on everybody's screens. Almost everybody. I've just discovered that the iPad client has a bug and it's not coming up. But that's a problem that Zoom has, not us. So,
so iPad people can't see the polls?
Unfortunately, it looks like that's the case for now.
Okay. And how about mobile users?
On the phone, it works, interestingly enough.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a bug on the iPad client. On the iPhone, it works. I haven't tried Android because I do not have any Android at my disposal to test it. So,
yeah. Can I ask a question?
Yes,
Luca.
Please.
Luca, when you're hosting a meeting, can you determine who is yet to vote?
Good question. The way you could set up polls are either anonymous or non-anonymous. I would go for anonymous because I don't really care whether everybody has voted in the first place, and I don't care, who's voted for whom, really. But of course, you could have non-anonymous voting. That will mean there will be a trace of who has voted and, of course, who hasn't. But that would also mean that you will know who has voted what, which we don't normally do for best of. Best of is just the name scribbled on a piece of paper, and you don't know who wrote it, unless you know the calligraphy of individuals, that is.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's say maybe I can intervene here.
Please.
Because maybe, let's say, if we are going to like something like club elections or something, you need to vote in your clubs, like taking a decision. Maybe this is something there where you want to see even who has voted or not, because if it's needed. Let's say, so it can be other situation where you can use, for example, this part where it's not anonymous, not always.
So I would suggest, so Georgina is on an iPad and received the poll. That's very good feedback. I know that on mine it didn't. There could be an issue, and I've tried, in fact, to connect and disconnect because I had selected myself as a host. Yeah, let's try and make sure it does work. And maybe this is something that we could do a little more testing with. So when I was doing these tests and I was connecting 3 times with the same account, maybe that's not the typical use case. I should have logged out maybe and logged back in. But sometimes for, rapid tests, that's what you do. And it's good. Thanks for the feedback, Georgina, about that. I don't have any other prepared things. And I see we're halfway through the time that we had allocated, which is 1 hour. And I was wondering whether this is the good time, in fact, to unmute everyone, which I'm doing right now. And we will hear somebody's music, that's okay. To see whether we do have any specific question. Yes, please.
Yeah, I have one. Can we just speak up? Where in the settings do you enable the polls so that so those who want to use them, the clubs who want to use them, know where to find them in the settings? Okay. I'll share. And what settings should we have on and what are not important? Because I know that our host of our club first online meeting on Thursday had enabled all sorts of things on my unfortunately, I gave him my pro account, and so he changed a lot of the settings and went through, and now my settings have changed. So what would he have clicked on, and what are the ones we have to have on, and what are the not important ones? Okay. I think another one that I haven't touched on for now is breakout rooms, and that feature is a good one to have. I think for my virtual club, owing that many of us have never met in person, we use breakout rooms in order to create smaller groups of people, and we do it after table topics. So still during the meeting, we create 2-3 minutes at most time
where breakout rooms of 3 or 4 people are created automatically, and people join in these rooms to just chit chat, to talk, like you would do socially at the end of the meeting. We do it during the meeting, so everyone is compelled to stay, because if you do it at the end of the meeting, then most people will go. And by doing that, you get to meet, better in a smaller setting, the individuals, and then you reconvene everybody, and after the table topics, then we go on to evaluations, and the meeting restarts again in the main room. So that feature, breakout rooms, also must be turned on, and it's in the meeting settings page. I have sent a link in the chat, and that relates to polling for meetings. So Elizabeth, some information about all of that is in that link. I will create a bunch of links as well to add at the end of the meeting when it will be shared.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I ask a question then?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, so if first of all, if you're Toastmaster, do you need full privileges? That is, do you need to be a paid up user, or can the host give you full rights so that you can mute or unmute and so on?
Very, very good and important point. I am not of the view that the Toastmaster should be the host of the meeting. I would think that the Zoom master, the role of the person who has Zoom powers and that can handle and manage the meeting, should actually be a separate person. And whether it's always the same person, like, I don't know, the sergeant at arms of the club, or not, that is to be defined, and that is to the club to decide who has enough skills. I wouldn't put that on the shoulders of the Toastmaster of the day just because he or she has already a lot of things to do. And so I wouldn't want to be the person that mutes or unmutes people like that. Somebody else could do that role. There will be a host of the meeting, and the host can have multiple co-hosts. And co-hosts also can mute and unmute people. So you might have even more than one person to help out. And maybe that would include the Toastmaster of the evening. Why not? But I wouldn't pin all of the burden of running the technical side of the Zoom meeting onto the Toastmaster of the evening shoulders. That's my view. Your managed
Toastmaster can be given the powers, if you like, to mute, for example, if there is background noise from one of them and the Zoom master doesn't mute it. At least as Toastmaster, can you be given the rights?
Yes, you could. Yes, you could.
For example, Roderick, I give you co-host now, so if you want, you can try yourself.
Yep, and I've gotten just a notification on my screen that says Roderick is a co-host now, because I am also a co-host, I think. Yes. So you will see who is the host and who are the co-hosts. So as a co-host, you do have a little more rights, including running a poll. So I could start a poll myself right now. But breakout rooms, you must be the host to run them. Did you know this, Lorenzo? This is important. So breakout rooms can only be managed by the host, not by a co-host.
Exactly. So for breakout rooms, only the host can prepare them and run them, but the co-host is able to move from one room to the others, while the normal members were not allowed.
Yep.
And do you suggest that a Toastmaster is given co-host rules? So if I am Zoom master and someone else is going to be a Toastmaster, would you recommend giving him those Zoom rights?
I guess it also depends on the familiarity that the individual might have with computers. It could be intimidating. Maybe the person doesn't really have a computer and only has an iPad. You could be the Toastmaster of the evening on the iPad, no problem. But you might have printed the agenda on a piece of paper before, so you have things on paper and you can take notes and all. But you might not want to be bothered with running the meeting on the technical side. So again, it could be. I don't think that there is one single answer to give.
Okay.
But a very good question indeed.
Can I ask a question also?
Yes, please.
So there is basic and pro version.
Yes. Good.
Okay. Yep. So from what I've seen, okay, the difference is the time limit, for sure. Okay. And I think another difference is that in the Pro version, you can just, let's say, buy more participants.
So here's the scoop. When you have a free account, when you register and you do not give any specific, you don't buy anything from them, right? You will have your account. That account will allow you to create meetings, and you can have a limited length meeting as long as they're one-to-one, which is great. So you could start to use the technology. You could do a meeting with somebody. You could share the screen with them. They could share the screen with you. You could even do remote maintenance on the computer. I mean, as a son of an elder mother who's got a computer in another country, I sometimes do this because she messes up with her Mac and I need to fix it. So one of the things that happens when you're a little more knowledgeable about computers, So that's one way to use it. But then, of course, as you said, when you go above 2 people, that is a third person gets into the meeting, then you do have a cutoff time at 40 minutes. So Zoom says, okay, fine, you could do a meeting with up to 100 participants, but only lasting 40 minutes max. And I understand, their position. They want to make money out of this. They're programmers and the cloud infrastructure and all of that to pay. And so for longer meetings, you need to have the Pro account. Now, the Pro account, I've just bought it literally for my club today because I wanted to do a few more tests coming into this meeting. And it's 140 euros for a full year. In our case, that amount of money is 2 physical meetings. The rental for the room for 2 physical meetings already pays it. So it's already been paid off, since here in Switzerland until the 30th of April at least, there will be no physical meeting. So good investment, not a problem for that. You might want to pay more, but I don't know if it's really that important, because that is literally, for what I've understood, how many meetings you can run concurrently. They call it host, but if you want to run 2 parallel meetings, because maybe in your organizations there's 2 groups that need to use Zoom at the same time, if you only pay the 140 euros, which is, I think, for 15 euros or 14 euros a month, then you would only be able to run 1 meeting at a time. Now, if you buy another one, then you could run 2 meetings at a time. But that's not really our need. We do use these tools, in a very sparse way. So go with the basic and the simplest and the cheapest Pro plan, and all of your needs will be satisfied. Also, Pro gives you the breakout rooms, the polls, and all of the other things that otherwise in a free account you would not have.
Really, because I started using basic and I created a breakout.
Could be. I was not able. Maybe I'll try. It's a good point. But maybe my settings were off and I didn't find them. All I know, for what my recollection of this is when you have a basic account, you have fewer options in the menu. And I tried and looked for them and couldn't find them. But maybe you're right, and I've misspoken.
Okay, thank you. I have another question.
Let me take the other person who was just about to speak. We'll get back to you.
Yeah, mine was that in our district we had the question: can we also rent the Zoom or buy the Zoom just month-wise? And when we asked the Zoom advisor, they said no way. You have to buy a whole year as Pro. But we have actually found that if you buy and pay it on a monthly term, you can, when the coronavirus is over and you go back to your normal club meetings, cancel it, and you only pay the months you have consumed.
Yeah, that's another way.
Because we still have to pay our rent and buy the Zoom Pro. We still have to pay the rent despite the coronavirus going on.
Oh, so you're not doing the meetings in the rooms, and you still need to pay the rooms, hopefully.
We have, with the church, we have every first and third Thursday a slot for 80 euros a month.
In spite of the fact that you cannot use the room.
And we're not using them now, no.
Okay. That's bad. That's bad enough.
It's like a lease, yeah.
Theodora just wrote a message in the chat, which I think is very relevant. For most countries, the 40 minutes limit was removed because of the COVID-19 situation. I was not aware of this. There is a COVID-19 page on Zoom. There was no mention of this at all. Whether, you know, this is for anybody's country here, and I see that there's people literally from every country in District 109 and more. I don't know. So check it out. Maybe that will be the case. I don't mind giving Zoom a little money because they have an excellent software product, and I think it's worth rewarding them for what they do. In our case, given that no physical meetings will happen, there will be no money given to anybody for room rental, and so it is already paid for a full year without a problem. You know, in other cases like Elizabeth's, yeah, that might not work. So.
I think we have a question from Risto. He raised the hands a while ago. But you are muted, Risto.
Okay, hi. Hi, Luca. I have one question about the agenda. When you are conducting a meeting, do you have a break between two parts of the meeting?
Can you repeat your question? I'm not sure I understood.
When you're conducting the meeting on Zoom,
yes,
do you make a break between two parts? Between first part with the speakers and between the next part with the table topics?
I think this is a club question, and it's within the officers and the members to decide whether what you've been doing in your physical meetings will be kept in the exact same form or not. The point being, as I said, if you want to have maybe the breakout room function and run these smaller breakouts where people could socialize with one another and chit chat, yes, it might be doable, and it might be best if it's done within the meeting to take a little bit of a break. You might even take a bio break and go to the toilet real quick without then doing it at the end of the meeting because you risk that people just disappear. So that might be a thing that would have a little impact on the agenda. In the virtual club I'm a member of, that is already part of the agenda. That breakout room time is scheduled in the agenda.
Okay, how long is the time?
Up to you.
Okay.
Do it 3 minutes, 5 minutes.
Based on your experience.
We do 2 to 3 minutes. We basically keep it also as a buffer. If table topics went long or were interesting, we are keen to even not do breakouts if we see that there was good dynamics in table topics.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Luca, because I see a lot of people, maybe I take the order of a question.
Please help me with that.
Yeah, exactly. I think we could go back to Theodoros. He had a second question when we go to David and Elizabeth.
Okay.
And then Theodora. Okay.
My question is about, first of all, Zoom, if there are any deficiencies, any technical issues that we might need to face, and from your experience, if you faced any technical problems. And actually, the past few days, probably during the whole coronavirus situation, it seems that all platforms appear to have, you know, slowdowns, some technical problems that which
yes.
are not actually due to the platform, but it's due to the internet.
Well, yes, very possible, and most likely I would agree with you, having worked in this field for many years. The issue might be more on the network connectivity and the bandwidth and, you know, performance of many users all at once connected from, you know, the same city and household, or, you know, overload basically on the lines, rather than scaling the cloud platform. Now, whether Zoom has issues on their system at some point, there is a link I've just shared on the chat, and that's status.zoom.us, where you would see if there are breakdowns, and they will announce them right there on that, you know, mini website, which is just basically, you know, the health check of the Zoom platform. So that's the first thing you might want to check if you see that there are problems. Maybe the problems are not on their side. Maybe the problems on your ISP, a local network exchange, whatever. There might be, many different things that might not work properly. But in general terms, the reliability of these platforms is quite high.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we go to David Perry now, if you want to raise your question.
Yeah, hi, Luca. Thanks for your great presentation, and thanks for showing us all this great information. I have a question when it comes to voting. So we have a club officer elections coming up in May, and I'm unclear based on what I read in the Toastmasters rules for elections, if something like using Zoom polling would be a valid way to conduct an election. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I myself have been in a similar situation with my club, and it's a university club, another club of which I'm a member of, that basically got advice from the university itself, since it's a student association, that they would even appreciate using a doodle poll for an election. It was a simple one. It was not complex. So we put together a doodle poll, and we got the required quorum of votes, and a screenshot worked. So whether, and remember, these are associations that are valid in front of the Swiss law. So it's more of how does it work for an association also in front of the law of the country where you're established. Whether Toastmaster International thinks differently or not, I would leave maybe this to more, experienced people who deal directly with Toastmasters International, such as Francesco or Lorenzo.
Yeah.
I don't see limits really. So.
Francesco, do you have an opinion? Maybe you have a bit of experience on voting.
I think using polls is okay, and in fact we might use them during the district council to vote for the incoming officers, because as long as you make them anonymous, because they're done in a way that not even the host can see who voted and for whom they voted. So it guarantees anonymity. It counts the votes in a very fast and simple way. And I don't see in principle why they should not be used in a club environment.
Yeah, and I agree with, go ahead, sorry.
We can further check it with Toastmaster, and in fact we might have, because we will choose a way in which we'll be voting at the district council.
By the way, my virtual club, I wasn't at the election, but I know they've been held electronically because that's the only way we meet. And that club is, yeah, I mean, it's chartered, but it's undistricted because, virtual clubs are not in a district so far, but we are a normal club. And so at least that satisfied the needs for Toastmasters International in the case of a virtual club. With no virtual club, we still are in-person's club, by the way, in the eyes of Toastmasters International to this day. But I think that in general terms, given the condition, they definitely might waive any stricter checks on these things, whether,
Excuse me, here is Karim, I'm speaking.
Sorry, can you wait 1 second, because we have 2 other people in the queue, and then I come to you.
Maybe you wanted to add something on this specific
Oh,
thing?
you want to add
Yeah,
something?
exactly, I was going to add something because I'm with David here.
Okay,
I'm
good.
Karim, I'm also in Toastmaster, but I'm also his wife. And I just, we are doing the virtual meetings already, and for polling and for other things, I found Google Forms as a great tool, because you can immediately zoom in and only the host receives the results, which could be, for instance, the president or something, if necessary for an election. So it's another alternative.
And a very good one, I agree. I used Google Forms for the last few years when I was area director and division director for contests forms. You know, the forms that the speakers and the judges need to fill in, and you could actually use them, do them via Google Forms. It's actually much faster. So.
Yeah.
Okay, so we go to Elizabeth now. There's a question.
Yeah, we had the issue we had, Luca, when we held our meeting for the first time here on Thursday was, how do we post the agenda? Because of course, no one has gone in and downloaded the agenda and printed it out and has it lying in front of them. Unfortunately, the members hadn't done that. Do you do that, or do you show it before or in between, or is it the hostmaster who shows it or the moderator who shows it? How do you do it?
In our club, we don't really show the agenda. People would be free to go and check it. We use Free Toast hosts. That club is mostly American based, and so they don't use Easy Speak right there much. On the other hand, what you could do is to create a PDF of the agenda and maybe share it as a file, which could be done. Let me see if I can actually do it with my
So do you do that when you introduce the evening? You don't say who is going to be the 3 speakers and the 3 evaluators and who's the table topic master of the evening and the general evaluator of the evening?
Well, as I said, one of the things you might want to do is to rename people on the meeting as they show up, or have them do it themselves, because they know that there will be a speaker, and just say, you know, speaker 1, Luca, speaker evaluator 2, Lorenzo, and that will be enough. So you could pinpoint easily in the participants list. Now we're only 24 now, which is, you know, a typical number of members also showing up. But if you open up the participants list on the right side, you see that you need to scroll up and down anyway, because you know, there's more than a few people. So it's easier to see them if they do prepend, you know, speaker, evaluator, grammarian, accounter, so you can actually see them easily when they will do the report or their speech for that matter. So that is something you could do.
So you don't show any agenda at all? So you don't know what time you will finish or anything? It's not visible?
Well, no, we know, we just don't show it on the Zoom platform.
Okay.
People might have their own, you know, another window on their Mac or their PC for that matter, or an iPad even, where you would see the agenda on Free Toast Host or Easy Speak as we use it.
Okay. Could I just ask you with the name change, the other day I had 3, when I held the mouse, hovered it over the participant list, then 3 little dots would come up and we could rename, but now it's not doing so.
Because you're not the host. And so if you would become...
If everyone is to go in themselves and to rename themselves, then they can't do it. It's the host who has to rename them.
No, you can rename yourself.
It depends if you can jump in. It depends if they also
No, you
allow
can.
you.
You can rename yourself. I just tried. On the 3 dots, you just click and you can say rename.
But I have no 3 dots.
Look at your own window and go on the 3 dots. I mean, which platform are you on, Elizabeth?
I'm on
Windows, Mac, or
I'm
iPad?
on a Mac. And yesterday I could do it with no problem, but today I only have, oh, now I have rename. Okay, yep, it has come up. There's no 3 dots though. Okay,
exactly. But now, let's say, Elizabeth, now I'm changing the setup, for example, and now, like host, you are not allowed anymore to rename. If I want, I can block you. So now
That's the host who does that, right? That's the host who can block.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so the host has to give the allowance to rename, because I didn't have it before. Okay, so I get it.
No, you can do it yourself, but the host is the one who can block anyone not to rename again themselves. So, right? So,
okay.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah. Now I
cannot
blocked
rename
you.
at the moment, for example.
Yeah, exactly, because I blocked you, and now I allow you to do again. So, for example, now you can again, but it's me like a host.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Please remember to show that on Tuesday, Lorenzo.
And then we have Theodora. She wanted to ask a question.
Yes, hi, Luca and everyone. So we already discussed that it's good for the speaker to have a good view of the timekeeper. But also in regular meetings, we have the grammarian who is writing down the word or phrase of the day on a whiteboard so that everyone can see and remember to use them during their speeches or improvisations. Do you have any advice on how can we somehow replicate this, at least during the table topics? To have the word and the phrase of the grammarian somewhere visible.
Very good point. The word of the day, you either put it on the chat, there is no way to pin it, unfortunately. It will scroll down. So maybe the grammarian could actually copy paste it and put it right there for people so that it's reviewed in the chat. And yeah, I would suggest, and that's what I do also at physical meetings, write it in your notes, put it in on the top of your screen, because if you were bound to take notes of the meeting you're at, just write it on your notes. And guess what? I do have a notepad on the side of my, meeting workstation right now. It's up to the interest of each individual to know the word of the day. So make a note of it for you locally. That's how I see it in the end.
Okay.
So for tabletop, it's a little more complicated because, of course, who's the volunteer, who comes up. And now my club is a little different because we do table topics up front because it's a little more complex. We create themes for discussion more than anything. So we have teams, and you can select which one to go on and create a mini speech at the very moment. So in a way, table topics are pre-prepared. They're slightly different from a normal club, but that's because of what we talk about. But in normal cases, I would think that this would be a case where the topics master calls up for volunteers, and then he or she asks the question right there and then, and the person just goes for it. So no difference whatsoever for a normal setting. Now, in some cases, I've seen the topics master giving a question to everyone and then calling for the volunteer, which I don't know whether that's the proper way, but I've seen that happen. Again, experiment. There is no good or bad way. There are best ways, best practices, and things that you will see don't work as nicely. So those you will not do them any longer. Very simple.
What we encountered with that and the grammarian and with the table topic, the person who was the table topic master didn't know who was going to be the evaluators and all that because we hadn't got the names right. So he took some of the people who were speaking a lot, and those who didn't get to speak during the evening weren't chosen because he didn't know who was who. So it's really important with the name giving.
That's a good point.
Indeed.
Yeah, I'm beginning to realize how important that is now. Yeah, get it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't have any questions so far, like people.
I have a question about if time permits. Okay, Luca, may I ask the question?
Go ahead, please.
Okay, so this is not really my question. It's a question which was asked to me by one of my colleagues, by one of the club members. Since he doesn't have a Bluetooth mic, and most people don't, like you do, Luca, most speakers feel glued to their laptop, so they can't really make use of the whole room or the whole, we use the stage, to make a transition from one point to another. Are there any specific suggestions or recommendations you can make so that you can enhance audience engagement when you're basically glued to your laptop, to make effective transitions, as well as to ask audience involvement, for example, because raise your hand, I'm not sure, well, you probably can raise your hand, but I'm not sure about how to use the stage when you're sitting down in front of the laptop,
Sure.
It sounds like it's a handicap.
You see, this is one of the limits, in a way, of video conference done on the little screen. That's what we do. That's what we have. Now, granted, given, like you say, I do have a Bluetooth headset, I can go back a little bit. Now, of course, I'll be darker because guess what? There's less light. I do have lights just in my face. By the way, lighting is very important. And if I would, turn away my light, you'll see I'm much more darker. I do have an easy and cheap LED lamp that works really well, and I have another one on this side, so I don't have much shadow in my face. So the setting is important, obviously. Bluetooth headsets don't cost much these days. I have, you know, these very small ones from Soundcore. They go in ear, very, very small, and they cost 50 euros, I think. So it's a little bit of an investment. You could do a lot more than just Toastmasters with it, by the way. I'm listening to many more books with those headsets these days than I was previously doing, just by the sheer size of these. So, you know, these are still good. I can use them. You can connect them to my, like right now I'm using them on my laptop. They're Bluetooth. Most newer laptops work with Bluetooth headsets or USB for that matter. So that would be an investment that I think is worth considering in general, having a Bluetooth headset, whether in ear or over the head like this, up to you and up to anybody's liking. And, you know, again, being a little far away and standing and maybe moving your screen where the camera is, that also helps to get the best perspective where you can have a little bit of stage and move your head, your body as well as your hands when you speak. But of course, it will never be the same as meeting in person. So,
or possibly, I don't know, I'd like to sound everyone's views on this. How about, for example, turning the laptop, for example, point number 1, point number 2, point number 3? Does that make sense, or am I?
I'm having a moment of sorrow for a second, because one of in my virtual club, a person who was a member basically did his speech, and he had set up a system where you actually had 3 cameras taking, and he was able to move, control, and do everything with it, basically with 3 shots of different kind. And I was like, whoa, I need to ask him what to do. And the sad part, the sorrow part, comes from the fact that this older gentleman unfortunately passed away like the week after he had done his speech. And I was never able to ask him how he did it. That's very sad. So there is a way to do it. Of course, it requires a little bit more complexity on your computer system. Modern software allow you to do, basically be a director of different cameras on your screen. And cameras can be as simple as an iPad or an iPhone. Via Wi-Fi, they talk to the software and you can control. You do a lot of interesting things. Depends on how much time you have and how worth is it to do for just Toastmasters. Whether you can take something good out of it because, I don't know, it'll enhance your professional presentations, sure, go for it. But for 99.9% of the people, that will be overkill.
Okay. And the second question, if I may, is there anyone else who has a question though? Because
nobody at the moment.
Okay. One of the things I've done some research about on the internet is that when you're speaking, it makes a huge difference that you look at the camera lens rather than at the screen, because you can establish better eye contact that way. And one of the things that was suggested in this blog I was reading was the use of a teleprompter, so that your notes or the text that you're using is placed really close to the place of your lens. Is there a way of seeing my current view of all the speakers on full screen, and floating on top of that, any notes at the top of my screen close to the lens, so that although you might be looking at your notes, people see you as if you're looking at them directly, as if you're looking at the lens.
Again, this is a higher level of abstraction needed in order to make this happen. Again, it could be overkill. It could be an interesting thing to make work. Maybe there are softwares that can help you do that. I wouldn't see why you might not have an additional layer of your teleprompter right underneath the camera, so you're looking at the teleprompter, but you're looking at the camera at the same time. It's just a few centimeters of distance, so it wouldn't be noticeable. But do we really need to do teleprompting? I mean, does anybody really type in exactly what you will be speaking about at your speech? I think it's too much.
No, not type. No, of course not. Of course not. No,
I mean,
point.
It just requires a lot more time to set up. You see, that's how I see it. So
yeah, but speakers who are inexperienced, beginners to the club, normally start with notes, and they would want to look at them.
I don't have a problem if the beginner speaker will have the notes and will take a look at the notes exactly like you would do at a normal meeting. I wouldn't have a problem. And I'm hoping that the person has notes in writing and not on an application, so you need to command tab or change application on the fly once you're in a Zoom call. Yeah. I mean, don't make your life overcomplicated. It's already complicated the way it is. That's my view. So
yeah. Sorry if I intervene. It's already 8:08.
Yeah,
we planned for 1 hour. So if people want to leave, if still somebody having some questions, we're happy to answer.
Thanks a lot for coming, and I'll share the links and information that I wanted with Lorenzo so we could send a recap and hopefully a YouTube link or something of this presentation.
We will publish the video in our District 109 YouTube channel. And thank you very much, Luca, for your time of preparation. It was very helpful. I think